Episode 7 of the Glass of Joe podcast is here, and it's a little bit different than the first 6. Joined, as always, by my partner, PJ Glasser. I'm Joe Malfa, and we usually bring in our guest in the middle of the episode, but we've got our incredible guest this week right out of the gates. He is the man for all things Washington Wizards over at NBC Sports Washington, Chris Miller. C-Mills, how you doing today? Thank you for joining us.
No problem, guys. Anytime. I'm hanging in there. Hope you guys are doing well.
The last time I saw you was about, it was like end of January before I moved down to my other job, and you didn't have this beard going on. How is that your quarantine project?
Yeah, I think I'm going to keep it too. I'm a little bit different since March the 12th. Obviously, what's going on with COVID and what's the sickness that is racism in our country. I've decided that this is going to be kind of a new me moving forward. Man, I'm keeping my beard.
I like it.
Until my wife says get rid of it.
You've been working on those dance moves too. You become a professional TikToker with the kids, man.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. Just kind of connecting with my kids on a different level. I haven't done it recently just because I just don't really kind of feel like dancing with everything that's going on. But I think I'll get back to it eventually. But it was something different, right? My daughter kind of challenged me to it, and I was like, well, maybe you didn't notice about your dad, but he's got a little bit of rhythm. So
yeah.
It was actually fun to do at the time. I appreciate you asking about it.
There you go. And if everything goes well, and I say that because there's still a lot of balls up in the air right now that still need to be juggled properly. But if everything goes well, how excited are you for basketball to start up again?
I'm concerned more than excited because I just don't know what this bubble is really going to entail. I don't know what it looks like. These practice facilities are being shut down as we speak, guys. The latest one is the Miami Heat, where these guys aren't even going through 5-on-0 workouts. They haven't even done 5-on-5. And yet these facilities are being shut down because of COVID. So to be real honest with you, I'm concerned. And until the 22 teams get down there and they actually go through working out, scrimmaging, I'm interested to see what kind of the numbers look like in terms of positive testing. And I think that kind of needs to be at the forefront, as I know a lot of fans are excited, right? They want to get back to see the games, but I'm more concerned about player safety.
Yeah.
And until we can get this COVID under control, I mean, we're seeing these numbers going elevated to higher numbers than they were when they kind of hit their peak about a month and a half ago.
Talk about player safety. I wanted to ask you a couple Wizards questions. First one being about John Wall. Do you think with just everything going on, the uncertainty, you think the team's making the right move, resting him and hoping that he fully recovers for next season?
PJ, I think the most important thing is next year, right? This is great that the Wizards find themselves in this position where despite the injuries and despite the record, they kind of find themselves in this position where they can do two things at once. And I've been talking about this recently where, barring any, COVID cases, they can develop young players while also still trying to go for this playoff spot, considering what's going on with the Brooklyn Nets and feeling like half of their team is not available.
Right.
And how many games that they're ahead of Washington. This is an opportunity for these guys to continue to develop the young players and still have an all-NBA type player in Bradley Beal, in my opinion, that if he decides he wants to play, there's still all NBA out there in Brad's future. And I think an opportunity to go down to Orlando, if his mind is in that space, he can really go down there, I think, and do some damage and give the Wizards that chance to get into the playoffs. And, you get in, you might be playing Milwaukee, okay, best team in the league before the pandemic hit. But the reality is, if I asked you guys before the season started that the Wizards would have a chance to make the playoffs, I don't think anybody would have been like, yeah, that's really going to happen. So
exactly.
It really kind of speaks to the circumstances in which they find themselves. And there was some improved play towards the end of before COVID hit. So kind of to answer your question, they really can do two things at once, depending on, again, this is really up to Bradley Beal. I think Bradley Beal is that dynamic of a player. Well, if he goes down there, again, in the right mind frame to bring along the young players, they have a chance to do something special down there.
It's funny you bring that up because that was going to be my next question is even if Beal doesn't play with the news coming out about the Nets, do you think they still have enough to make up those 2 games to force that 8-9 playing game and make it?
Yeah, again, I think everybody looks different now. PJ, I've been saying this, that I don't think the Lakers, I don't think the Clippers, I don't think Milwaukee, I don't think any of these teams are the favorites. I think this is going to take on, um, I think it's going to take on a different kind of storyline now because they've been gone for so long. I mean, this has been the equivalent of a complete off season that these players have been away from the game. So I just can't think like, well, the Lakers are just going to show up again. And yes, they have LeBron. Yes, they have AD. Yes, they've acquired J.R. Smith. But to put all of that together and give them some time, to work out, fly down to Orlando, all of these things are going to look completely different. And I think that's why the Wizards as a team, maybe these young players have developed. We were on a conference call today with Rui Hachimura talking about him, adding 10 pounds of muscle into his game. Troy Brown Jr. has dropped 6% body fat. So Thomas Bryant has abs. I mean, there's all these things that these players have talked about that they've been doing, but we won't know until they get down there. And again, that's the reason why I kind of couched my expectation, is because once they get down to Orlando, then I feel like business will pick up and then we'll really start to figure out who's who down there.
Of course. And when the schedule came out for the restart, my mind, and I think the minds of a lot of people, went immediately to AAU, because you look at that schedule and you got a game at 1 o'clock, a game at 2:33, and so on. What do you think that whole dynamic is going to do for viewership with essentially a standalone game on at a time for the better part of 2 weeks?
I was literally laughing a couple of weeks ago with Ish Smith, and I've talked to Brad about this, and I said, hey, man, get your mindset into going back to what it was like when you showed up in your slides, right? And you walk into the gym with your backpack on, and, they had about, 4 courts going, and you walk in there and you look and you see, hey, there's Chris Paul getting some bump right now, or there's LeBron over there, or Melo's over there. And you just remember when you played, what it was like when you walked in that packed gym, right? Well, it won't be packed in terms of fans, but you still get the mindset of it's kind of like all AAU all over again. So it's kind of like they're repeating their youth. And I think that's probably the best mindset to have, because if you go in there thinking, I just don't really want to be here, but I'm here just so I get my money. I mean, that's kind of like the mentality that you shouldn't have, right? And then, so I feel like, and Ish and Brad laughed. They're like, yeah, man, I remember when I used to have my slides on and my ankles were taped, and, we walk into the gym. I'm like, all right, who we got today? And you're seeing the run before you play. So that might be kind of like the cool part of it. I wish I could be down there just for that part of it, just to see what it would be like when these guys enter the arena.
I'm looking forward to – I know the NBA and ESPN have mentioned that they're doing like a sort of behind-the-scenes documentary about it. If everything goes well, I'm curious to see that, because there's going to be a lot of fun little tidbits like that. PJ and I talked about it a couple of weeks, almost like the whole Little League World Series vibe we get every year, where they show the kids like playing ping pong back in the little village. So that's something I'm looking forward to see. But getting into some of the predictions and previews now, you touched on it before. The teams that we regarded as favorites pre-pandemic, Lakers, Clippers, Bucks, and so on, are those still the teams that most people you think will be rolling with, or as the time goes, you think you're going to see a lot of people picking upsets?
Yeah, I feel like these, what are they calling them, seeding games, I think will tell a lot about where some of these teams are. A couple of weeks ago, my mind kind of goes towards the Houston Rockets. And the only reason why I say that is their style is completely different than everybody else's, right? So you have a choice to make when you play Houston. Do you want to play their style, or do you want to go big and just pound them on the backboards? It's your choice, right? But more times than not, I think psychologically these teams go into games against Houston, at least when they started this towards before the season ended. And they'd be like, wait a minute, PJ Tucker's playing center. He's like 6'5". Oh, well, shoot, I'm going to go out and guard him on those corner threes. Well, you know what happens when that happens. He either hits it or it opens up a lane for somebody to get in the paint. We all know Houston's system. It's paint points and threes. That's all they live. If you do something out of that, you're coming out, right? So their style is different than every other team, and I think that's what makes them a more intriguing group, and especially if they get some more time together when they have this, if you're 6'6" and over, no thank you, right?
Yeah.
But I was talking to Jeff Green earlier on a podcast that I was doing, and I was like, you're like one of the biggest guys on the team, but we know Jeff Green's versatility when he was here with the Wizards. Really, he can play, multiple positions. And he was really excited about, the opportunity to go down to Houston after getting waived by Utah to play in that style because it's just so different.
Do you think that the long layoff will almost close the gap a little bit? Those young teams, the Grizzlies, the Pelicans, the Magic of the world, do you think they can close that gap with some of the best teams, the Lakers, the Clippers, or you think that the higher teams will roll through those lower seeded teams?
It just depends. Again, PJ, I'm so curious to see what it looks like when they get down there, what these guys are. We saw the picture of Zion yesterday.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He
looks incredible.
He looked like
Hulk
Bane.
almost.
He looked like Bane. He was like a mix between Bane and Thanos. Right?
Yeah.
You're just like, you see him, you're like, oh my God, this guy hasn't been eating gumbo. This guy's been in the lab, right? But I still think LeBron has that ability to carry a team, regardless of this being, I think this is 17th season. The Clippers, to me, I thought was the favorites before the season started. I love their two-way players. Kawhi and PG together is special. And then the fact that you've got these, I hate to call them role players because it's not fair, but you've got some guys that really embrace their roles, right? Montrez, Sweet Lou can get a bucket. The fact that they got, Markieff Morris to join and his toughness. And it's just a tough team. The Celtics have wing players that are dynamic, although Gordon Hayward today said, when that fourth child is born, he's out. You know what I mean? So where does that happen? When the baby comes, what happens in terms of the scheduling? But the fact that Jason Tatum, who I've been told that he's took it up another level, which is scary because he's 21 and he was already really good.
Yeah.
And Jaylen Brown, I've always been a fan of his. So Boston is in the mix. The X factor is Philly. If Embiid has dropped the LBs and if he's motivated, and by the way, we were talking about how Zion looked. Ben Simmons to me is the Incredible Hulk. He looks amazing, right? So there's so many factors. And I apologize to the reigning, defending NBA champs.
They're so forgotten about. It's incredible.
It's so unfair, and it's not just because they're in Toronto. It's like when your best player leaves, and people kind of forget that Pascal Siakam is really good, and their group is still together. They just lost, their best player. Toronto's in the mix also. The fact that they've already started the bubble process of being down in Fort Myers already as a team, they've been down there. So they've already been quarantined. They're already, as a unit, I think they've got a head start over everyone else in terms of what this new normal looks like down in Florida. So, to answer your question, I think there's just a lot of factors that leads to it. I think the favorites, they could still be the favorites. But if the Pelicans, they're scary to me because of Zion and the fact that, they have Redick and they have Ball and they have Drew Holiday and they have so many pieces that they could give one of those top seeds some trouble.
Interesting. Now, obviously, there won't be any fans. These teams won't be playing in their own arenas. Guys will have the opportunity to watch each other like we're talking about. And these teams will be playing so many games in a short amount of time. So what aspect of the Orlando bubble intrigues you the most personally?
Load management. Okay. So every team is required to play one back-to-back. Okay, so every team will play, one of them.
Right.
How do the contending teams manage their stars is something that I'm curious to watch. And for a team like Washington, if Bradley does play, how do you manage him on back-to-backs? Because, again, while I understand why they're going down there, my focus is next year.
Mm-hmm.
John's back, and the last thing you need is for there to be a significant injury to somebody else. Like, when the Wizards roll the ball out next year, as I'm thinking, is this is a top 4 team in the East. Okay, so the last thing you need is for something to happen down there in Orlando. And what's going to happen with Wizards fans, guys? What's the first thing that they're going to say? Well, why the hell were you down there, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really focused on next year, but I understand why they're going down there, and I feel like, well, since you're down there, you might as well go down there and compete.
And now we usually do a segment that we like to call the Swift 7 with our guests. 7 rapid-fire questions. but we're going to amend that too a little bit this week. I'm going to give you 7 questions about the East. PJ is going to give you 7 about the West, so we kind of get a better picture of how you're viewing the title restart, the title race in this restart, excuse me. So question 1, the team in the East you're most looking forward to watching during the restart?
Toronto.
Coach under the most pressure?
This could be East or West or just in the East?
Just
all
East.
7 of these are the East.
Brett Brown.
I thought that was an easy one. Player in the East not named Giannis who could have the biggest impact on the postseason?
Pascal Siakam.
Biggest threat to the Bucks?
Boston.
We'll continue with the other few in a second, but one that just popped into my mind. You mentioned Philly before, and we know how bad they were on the road this year. Everything's a neutral site. And you mentioned how Ben Simmons looks now. Do you think that they're in a better spot than that this whole pause almost was to their benefit?
Depends on what Joel Embiid looks like. He's the X factor. Probably the biggest X factor for any player on any team, because when he is good, he's a problem. But when he's disengaged, he's a problem for his teammates.
Now, sleeper team to watch out for in the East?
Orlando.
East matchup that you most want to see, and this could be at any point of the playoffs, not necessarily in round 1.
Milwaukee, Toronto.
And now last one for the East. What's your Eastern Conference final matchup prediction, and who do you like to come out of the East?
Depending on how these teams look once they get down to the bubble, I am really excited to see Milwaukee and Toronto because I think there's some
bad blood still left over.
Yeah. I think there's some, when we see you again, there could be some smoke, right?
Unfinished business for the Bucks.
Absolutely. I think it's the Bucks v Toronto, and now, I think Toronto wins it.
Wow.
I like that.
Okay, very nice. All right, now the West. Number 1, team who can be the biggest threat to the Lakers and the Clippers?
Houston.
Co-star more important to their team, Anthony Davis to the Lakers or Paul George to the Clippers?
Paul George.
Sleeper team to watch out for in the West?
New Orleans Pelicans.
Okay. Now, I wanted to touch on Utah a little bit. Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, do you think they've kind of amended that relationship a little bit? Because I feel like they could surprise maybe some people in the West, but if they're not clicking, they have no chance.
Hell no. Hey, man, listen. I've always said this about people. Their first reaction is their real reaction. And when the reports came out about there being some issues between the two of them because of the COVID and how, obviously Donovan allegedly contracted it, I was like, that's not good. Yeah. So what happens is in this business, guys, and you'll see this, is it's funny to me when the statements come out after the truth was told, right? So the reports came out that Donovan was feeling some type of way.
Right.
Then all of a sudden the subsequent statements and press conferences come out of that to kind of like take us off the scent. Mm-hmm. I'm one of them old dogs. The original scent was the main scent. Yep. And I just don't see them being a factor. I think that could end up being a divorce between one of those two players.
Who do you see grabbing the 8 and 9 seeds in the West? It's so jumbled up right now. Memphis has a 3.5 game lead in the 8th spot, and then the Blazers, Pelicans, Kings, Spurs, Suns, all right there. If
Trevor Ariza was still with Portland, he opted out. Obviously, he has his son that he's got custody of during that month. I would have thought Portland could have been the 9 seed. I'm going to go Memphis, New Orleans.
Okay.
That's the matchup I think everybody wants, too, is Zion and Ja for the chance to go play against LeBron.
No doubt.
Yeah. And I think that would be the Rookie of the Year. I think Ja won it. It's just me personally, just because, of his time in the league, right? He basically played really all season. Zion kind of came on late, but I think Ja's body of work will ultimately lead him to getting Rookie of the Year.
What's the matchup in the West you most want to see that wouldn't be Lakers Clippers? So it can
That's
involve.
the easy one. We can't make it that easy.
I was like, ooh, Lakers Clippers.
It can involve the Lakers and the Clippers, just not those two teams.
I think the Houston Lakers matchup would be interesting because it goes back to what I was saying before. Like, will the Lakers stay disciplined and just go big and pound them on the glass and just beat them up in paint points? Or does Anthony Davis start jacking threes, LeBron start getting into that too, and everybody wanting to play Houston style? Houston can seduce you into that style because when they start launching, threes and they've hit already like 6 in the first quarter, all of a sudden teams are going to be like, oh, we got to match that, right? Mm-hmm. So I think Houston v. Lakers would be an interesting one.
All right, so your team's down 1 with 10 seconds left. You could have your pick of any player in the West. Who would you want taking that final shot?
Kawhi Leonard.
Okay. What would be like your top 3? What would be your top 3 in the West?
I would go Kawhi. Damian Lillard. Actually, let me flip that. Shoot, Dame hit like a
37-footer, whatever.
That closed the show shot he hit against Houston. Was that? No, it was
OKC.
OKC.
Yeah.
That one was.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go Dame Lillard. Let me go Dame Lillard. Kawhi. Oh, that's a good one. Dame, Kawhi. Paul George, my guy, PG.
Okay.
We're on the same team, though, so who takes that shot?
Oh, good question.
That's a tough one. I think Paul's going to let Kawhi take it.
Agreed.
Interesting.
I mean, that shot Kawhi hit against Philly is still one of the you couldn't have written a better script. Like, imagine if I told you guys, like, in Hollywood, we're going to do a basketball story, and the last scene is a player hitting a shot like that, and it bounces around like this, and it goes in. I mean, Hollywood producers would be like, man, get out of here, man.
In a Game 7, no less. It's not like a 5 or 6 crazy. And then
kind of his emotion and kind of seeing Joel's emotion, too, was just like, that was Hollywood.
And then what's your Western Conference final matchup, and who do you have advancing to the finals?
Now you can say Clippers if you want. There you go.
Yeah, Clippers, Lakers, and I got Clippers winning. The reason why, and I've been saying this all along, is when you get 2 dynamic two-way players that their games mesh the way that Kawhi and Paul's did before the pandemic, they're going to give everybody fits. Because what happens is you can actually take turns on guarding LeBron. Like, what normally happens when you face LeBron? You got to find one guy, like Andre Iguodala was the guy. They're like, Iggy, you got to get Bron. Well, now PG and Kawhi don't have to just be like exclusively on LeBron, right? And now you've also got, Montrezl Harrell that can do it. You've got Markieff Morris that can do it. You've got all these bodies that you can throw at LeBron. LBJ is he's going to put up his numbers, right?
Sure.
But alleviating the stress of having to guard him like the entire game is the reason why I think the Clippers will have the advantage in that series.
My question in that series, and my brother is a hardcore LeBron fan, so we always debate about it. My question in the Lakers series against the Clippers, if that were to be the case, is who's on AD, though? Because they've got the matchup for LeBron, but I don't know if they have like a natural fit who can shut down AD, or you can see AD going off more than LeBron.
I think it's Montrez. I think Montrez has that dog in him. By the way, I totally forgot Pat Bev is still on their team.
True.
So he's kind of like the heart and soul of that team. So he could get into LeBron also. And then that would kind of then open up someone else guarding AD. So, again, when you have a team like the Clippers that have multiple defensive-minded players who take great pride in it, I think that's what's going to be kind of the differentiator between them and this Lakers team that's now adding J.R. Smith, which I just laugh every time I see that this guy is getting a job, and I'm just like –
as long as he looks at the scoreboard this time.
Yes.
Right.
Scoreboard.
So every time I see him now, I think time and situation, JR. Know the time, know the situation. Do you have a timeout? Okay. But this Lakers team has a lot of interesting pieces. But I would say Clippers would beat the Lakers, and then I got the Clippers beating Toronto.
And I was just going to ask you, I got two final questions before PJ gets to his trivia question that he likes to end every interview with. In that Clippers-Raptors series, just take us through how that matchup goes for you and why you pick the Clippers.
I think Kawhi has what I call corporate knowledge. He knows a lot about Toronto, right? He knows where all the bodies are buried, right? He knows all the plays, and that's kind of like the differentiator, I think, in a series like that. I think Nick Nurse has done a terrific job with that team taking over for Dwayne Casey, but Pascal Siakam has elevated his game, right? And to see those two kind of go at it, I won't even call it teacher versus student because Pascal has been really good even before Kawhi got there. But to see those two kind of just, these two bulls meeting center court would be fun. But, Paul George is a dynamic player, and I don't think Toronto has that level of a second star, right? But they've got great pieces. I love Gasol. I love Ibaka. I've just been a fan of Toronto's team for a long time because I think the way that they've kind of built the team, it's defense first, and if you don't play it, you don't play. So they're really going to be a tough out. But the Clippers, to me, and if you guys have noticed, it's kind of been like a theme with me. It's like these defensive-minded teams, I think, are the ones that are going to have success because regardless of what your offense looks like, if you can get stops, you got a chance to win a lot, especially going down to that bubble.
Defense travels.
Yeah.
My man, you got it, PJ.
That's
it.
And after a 4-month layoff, you're going to have probably a lot of guys looking rusty on the offensive end. It'll be easier to pick it up on the defensive end. And
can you shuffle your shoes? That's the
exactly.
key.
Especially when you've got Giannis coming down the lane, it's tough. But defense travels more than offense. And last one from me. You've had it this week. Giannis has said it. Austin Rivers has said it. I'm blanking. A third guy said it too. But they've said that there should be an asterisk next to this title because it's harder to win. So you, as a historian of the game, fan of the game, cover the game for so long, 15 years from now, looking back, you view this title with or without an asterisk? Is it legit? Is it harder than normal, like those guys said? How do you view this 15 years from now?
So, before Austin and the other players were saying this, I was like, no asterisk, because everybody's going down there with the same circumstance. Mm-hmm. But then you think about it, it is going to be harder. I mean, this is uncharted waters. No one has ever gone through this. Okay, there's not like one person that's going to go down there and be like, oh, I've played without fans and with COVID and all this other stuff. No one's kind of gone through it. So I think the journey to this title will be different. What I did say before is I think the record books should show that there was a 2019-2020 season. Obviously, the pandemic shut play down. I think in the record book should show a 2020 season and explain why there's just a 2020 season in the record books, that there was COVID. And I think that's where you have the champion in the 2020 season. 2019-2020 still has the records, everything like that, but there won't be a champion associated with that. I think you need to put just 2020 in there, who won the title, explain what it is, and kind of keep it moving. So the asterisks, I don't know. For me, I guess just an explainer. Unlike with baseball.
Someone said a footnote, basically. Not an asterisk, but a footnote.
Like with baseball, with the steroid, you had to put that in there. I mean, how the hell did McGuire, Sosa, Bonds, all these guys get these ridiculous numbers? You have to explain that, right? But I feel like just a footnote in the history books of 2020, there was this pandemic, here's your champion. And then we could debate down the road 5-10 years ago, what was the toughest championship crowned? And we could be like, well, shoot, man, that COVID year was difficult, man. They took 3.5 months off, then they had to go back to work. So then that can actually feed into your argument that you would have with your buddies. Because it's going to be hard. I mean, again, it's unprecedented.
I like that. All right, C-Mill. So your trivia question, we do it with every guest. We'll give you an NBA one. We think it's a pretty good one.
No media member has gotten their question right yet. So you got a shot to be number one. Yeah, it was
that's pressure.
Tim Kirkjian, your boy Joe Beninati from NBC Sports Washington. And well, I guess Sungmin Kim is our guy who we interviewed from the KBO. Technically a team staffer, not media, but the media guys have not been good. So you got a chance to win one here.
All right, no pressure. I'm ready though.
So 90 seconds and 3 strikes you get to answer your question, and clock starts whenever you're ready. So who are the only 2 players in NBA history to be drafted number 1 overall without playing college or high school ball in the U.S.?
Number 1 overall.
Number 1 overall.
Number 1 overall and did not play high school or college basketball stateside.
How much time I got left?
You're only at 15 seconds, so you got 75 left.
You got 3 strikes.
Gosh.
30 seconds. So 60 left.
60 left and all 3 strikes still.
Number one. Luka wasn't number 1. Oh, shoot. Oh.
45 seconds to go.
Dang, this is a good one. Oh, the pressure's mounting. Oh.
Quick hint, since you got like 30 seconds left, both were this side of the turn of the millennium.
20 seconds.
Oh my God, I'm gonna be so mad. Oh, this side of the millennium.
10 seconds.
I give up.
Kick
Dang
yourself.
it.
Oh, man.
I'm gonna kick myself right when you give me the answer.
You're gonna kick yourself. You want the one that you're really gonna kick yourself, or the one that like I should have gotten that, but that's probably forgotten about.
Give me both of them.
All right. So Yao Ming, 2002 Rockets, and then the other one was Andrea Bargnani, 06 Raptors. Those are the two. I'm honestly surprised that there are only 2. I thought maybe there'd be like 4 or 5. But
Oh God, that's right, Andrea Bargnani. God, he was so bad that it was kind of like
he was so bad.
Yao Ming is so disappointing that I didn't get that. Yao Ming.
Yao, I forget.
Wow.
Like I feel like a lot of people forget about him just because it was so short-lived. Because unfortunately he had the injuries. But
You remember the last
in his
injury that
peak-
cost him his career was against the Wizards at Capital One Arena.
Mhm.
Wow.
That was the last one. See, I remember that, but I can't remember that.
Oh,
That was awesome, man. That was really cool.
appreciate that.
Appreciate that.
Great
Yeah,
conversation.
I saw
man.
that, and
Appreciate
I'm like, I think Simo would like that question. So
it. Andrea Bargnani.
Bargnani, I bet you haven't thought about that name in a while, Bargnani.
You know who I was thinking about? I don't know why, because I know he didn't go 1. Nicholas Skidishvili. I don't know why that it was like right here. I'm like, bro, he didn't go number 1.
Yeah.
And how the hell did I remember his name?
Kind of like you, when I first saw the question from PJ, like my mind went to Luka, but then I was like, he wasn't number 1. That was too recent.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was thinking back, like as far as Kukoc, but like I knew he wasn't number 1, especially after just watching The Last Dance. But I got Yao. I always try to like do it myself before we come on the interview. I got Yao, but I didn't get Andrea. So
Wait a minute. Where did Anthony Bennett? Did Anthony Bennett play?
He went LV. Yep.
He did go to UNLV for that 1 year. See, that's why I'm saying this. God bless Anthony Bennett, man.
I know. Oh, man. Well, Simo, we appreciate it, man. We know you're busy, especially now with stuff starting to pick up and news dropping. So we appreciate you, stopping by, using some of your time and talking ball with us. We hope you had a good time.
Man, I had a great time, guys. I appreciate your time, man. And thanks. I love what you guys are doing, man. This is fun, man. Let's do it again sometime.
Appreciate it. Hey,
absolutely.
Whether it's maybe not during the sprint to the finish because you'll probably be busy, but as soon as it's done, we'll have a recap podcast with your name on it.
Hey, man, let's catch a wrapped in, and then we can kind of talk about how bad this draft is and try to figure out who could be the best player for the Wizards.
Love that.
Go.
Beautiful. All right, Simo, stay safe, man. Take it
Thanks,
easy.
guys. I appreciate it.
Most
Have a
importantly,
good
stay
one.
safe.
Thank you. You guys too. Thanks.
Once again, that was NBC Sports Washington, Chris Miller. Joe, he has covered the Wizards a long time. He's covered the NBA a long time. It was great to get his input on things maybe to expect to see coming back from the bubble. And it's just interesting as someone who knows the game as well as he does, there's still so much unknown, which is what we've been talking about. And I thought really the interesting thing for me personally was how much he liked Toronto. I was surprised about that. I think that the Bucks have separated themselves in the East from a lot of the other teams. I know Philly has a lot of potential. Boston has a lot of potential. Toronto's the defending champs. But to hear him think that even without Kawhi, Toronto still, he likes them to beat Milwaukee, I thought was a bold statement.
Look, the Raptors this year were tremendous. I mean, they're just getting contributions from everybody. I mean, Van Vliet's a solid role player, probably could have and maybe should have been the Finals MVP last year, but doesn't have the name recognition of a Kawhi Leonard, so he didn't get it, though he did receive votes. So you've got him as a nice side piece. You've got Kyle Lowry. Pascal Siakam is probably one of the best players in the NBA that doesn't get talked about in that
no
next
question.
cut. Like there's the superstar level, and then there's that next tier where it's guys knocking on the door, and he's ready to pound that thing down, and he can prove himself in this postseason. So, and on top of that, you've got probably one of the best coached teams in the NBA with Nick Nurse. So one thing for them that I will say, though, is they are a team that really relies heavily on their success at home. So that gets taken out of the equation. You know, we touched on with Chris how the Sixers are a team that really struggles on the road, and now on a neutral court, they don't have to worry about that. On the flip side of that, Raptors really excel at home and use that to their advantage up there in the north, and now they don't have that. So will that come into play? But he made some great points, and I didn't disagree with a single one of them. It's going to be I guess tournament isn't really the right word, a restart in which defense is going to prove itself because after 4 months of a layoff, I'm going to guess that it's a fair assumption to say the offense is what's going to be slowest to get back up to speed, getting your shooting stroke back, getting your rhythm with your teammates back. But defense travels, like he said, like you said, like we really hear about all the time in any sport really, but particularly basketball. So because of the fact that they are such a good defensive team, they're right in the thick of things. They are the second-rated team in the league this season in terms of defensive rating, but right behind the Bucks. So as we get into our predictions, I'll lean heavily towards the Bucks. But those are the two teams that are going to be very, very popular picks, even more so than the Celtics and Sixers of the world. Raptors kind of flew under the radar all year, like Chris said, just because they lost Kawhi. But they're going to be right back in the mix again with a better chance than people realize of repeating.
And then on the West, I thought he was bringing up some great points about the Rockets and how they're really the X factor through all of this. Each team has their identity. We know what the kind of brand of ball they want to play. The Rockets, like he said, they either want to shoot threes or they want to score layups. And now with this long layoff and just the bubble and the uncertainty of everything, it's going to be interesting to see how teams play Houston, what the strategy is. And because there's so much uncertainty, these are neutral site games, Houston has a big advantage if Harden is the kind of player that he's been in the regular season, if he can carry that over into Orlando.
On paper, teams should play big and physical against them. But like Chris said, it's just so tempting when you get into the flow of the game to just try to go shot for shot with them, and that's when they make you pay. And one of the main things that was kind of under the radar towards the end of the, I guess, quote-unquote, end of the season when things stopped was how dominant Russell Westbrook was after they switched the style of play to anybody over 6'5", doesn't count, basically.
Right.
Once they switched to that and spread the floor, Russell Westbrook was dominating inside. The lanes were wide open for him, a player of his caliber with his explosiveness and his just pure athleticism. Nobody was stopping him when he was taking it to the hole. So on paper, you should try to play big against them. But again, it's just going to be so enticing to, like he mentioned, Anthony Davis and LeBron, to pull up and shoot with them. But really, LeBron, AD, going over to the Clippers, Kawhi, Montrezl Harrell, going over to the Jazz, even if that's a matchup that could happen with Rudy Gobert. I know people are probably going to want to stay away from him, but with Rudy Gobert, all these
Jokic on the Nuggets.
Exactly. That's where I was going next. All these guys who have these really well-established bigs, if they dedicate themselves to playing big and physical, they shouldn't really have a problem. Now, in a series, you're going to lose games to the Rockets because they're just going to shoot the lights out one night, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
But if they stick to the game plan of playing physical and playing inside, they will eventually wear the Rockets down. I mean, there were games after the Rockets switched to style of play where they struggled against some of the bottom feeder teams in the league just because they couldn't really keep up with them inside. There was one of the national televised games back in February. It was right at the start of when Zion came back against the Rockets, and Zion ate like crazy on the boards in that game and just dominated inside. So they will have their problems if teams stay dedicated towards the idea of playing a big and physical. But if teams want to get into a shootout with them, they're going to have some trouble.
So we obviously don't know the playoff matchups yet. Each team has 8 regular season games left. So unlike hockey, which we'll get into in a little bit, we can't go specific first round matchups. But starting with the East, like we were talking about, I think it's important for Toronto to keep that second seed. They got a 3-game lead right now on Boston because I think the top 6 in the East really just separate themselves from the Nets, Magic, and Wizards. And if the Raptors fall into that 3 spot and they got to play either Miami, Indiana, or Philly, that could be really interesting. The team that was getting a lot of talk, that was getting a lot of love for the regular season was Miami. People loved Kendrick Nunn, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, their young pieces. Bam Adebayo was an all-star. But Jimmy Butler's a good player, but he's not a Giannis or a Kawhi. Yeah. He's not a guy that can win you multiple playoff series.
And
so
I was down there for a month and a half during the last stretch of the season, and they started slumping. All the talk on the radio in the Miami area was, is this Heat team going to fade to a 6 seed? So they were fading, so the break could help them. But I think they were just kind of sort of hitting a wall, and I don't know if it's going to be that easy for them to turn it back on because they don't have that superstar. Like Butler, again, really good player in that next tier.
Yeah.
But because of the fact that all the teams you're looking at above them have that top talent, and I'm really like close to putting Siakam at that level because the Heat don't really have that, and it's a really young core around them. I don't know that they'll be one of the teams that kind of restarts quick. So
I'm with you.
I don't think I look at them as that same kind of darling team that people looked at earlier on.
The team I don't think is getting enough love is Indiana. I like the Pacers a lot, and I think they're primed. They build their team for the playoffs. When you look at, Oladipo's not going to play, but Brogdon.
I was just going to say, without Oladipo, that's tough, though.
It is. With Brogdon and Sabonis and Miles Turner, they just have mismatch problems. If Oladipo was playing, I'd like them a lot more. But even so, I think if they do play Miami or Philly or whoever in the first round, I think they could get through that. Philly, I mean, Chris brought up a great point that Joel Embiid is really the entire X factor, not in just the East, but really maybe the whole league. As he goes, Philly goes. When he's good, I mean, he's good. If you remember that All-Star game in the fourth quarter when they were all really, really trying, I mean, Embiid was making some serious moves on Anthony Davis. He was backing him down, giving him the Hakeem Dream shake and all that. And Ben Simmons has looked like he's gotten stronger, and they're just so tall and physical. And if they can just get some shooting, and if Brett Brown can prove people wrong and prove that he's a better coach than a lot of people think that he is, Philly could make some noise. But to me, I think Milwaukee's the team to beat. I think they're kind of head and shoulders. Toronto's good, Boston's good. But Milwaukee, I think this is their year, especially
I agree.
With Kawhi not on Toronto anymore.
I definitely agree. I think you mentioned the Pacers. I'm not really kind of as high on them as a kind of darling team as you are. They are what we know they have been for the last 6 to 8 years, and that's a team that surprises everybody by how well they do in the regular season. And this is even going back to when Paul George was there. Surprises everybody by how well they do in the regular season, gets into the playoffs, takes a higher seeded team to like 6 games in the first round, and then loses. And I think that you're kind of going to get the same thing this year. As I go top to bottom, the Bucks are number 1, no doubt about it. They've got a 7-game lead. I think the Raptors keep that 2 seed, over the Celtics. The Celtics keep that 3 seed. The Heat, I think, and the Pacers both fade below the Sixers. There's currently a 2-game lead for the Heat over the Sixers. I think the Sixers vault to 4. Between the Pacers and the Heat, I'm not sure which one of them really ends up taking that 5 seed. Again, both teams that were trending down when things stopped, and teams that I think are going to have a tough time really getting their groove back in this restart. And beyond that, I don't really think they can make too much noise. So whether they're 5 or 6 doesn't really make a whole lot of difference in the end. Put it this way, I think either of them would lose in 5, maybe if they're lucky 6 to the Sixers or Celtics. And then you've got the bottom with the Magic at 7 and either the Wizards or Nets at 8. And again, for me, it goes back to those top four. I think they end up being seeded 1, 2, 3, 4, Bucks, Raptors, Celtics, Sixers. And of that group, I'm looking at the Bucks. I think, like we are talking about with Chris, it's going to be all about defense, all about rebounding. They are the number one rated team in terms of defensive rating this year. They're the number one team in terms of defensive rebounding possession. They have the best basketball player in the world in Giannis Antetokounmpo. And, we talk about how offenses are going to maybe struggle to get into a rhythm. Guys who rely on the jump shot, maybe they struggle to get into a rhythm early on. Well, Giannis doesn't. Now, the jump shot has been, especially from three-point land, his kryptonite, but it's been better.
Yeah.
But for him, he's just every shot of his, for the most part, kind of the same thing with Zion. It's from within 3 feet of the rim, if not a dunk. So I think players like that will have an easier time of getting into rhythm because it's not like he has to find his shooting stroke. His shooting stroke is putting the ball into the basket. So I think it's just going to be his time to kind of rise to the top. Now, we'll get there in a little bit, but whether he wins the title or not, different story. But in the East this year, Bucks have been the team to beat all year for good reason. And I think this restart bodes well for them because it's going to favor defensive teams and teams that have a superstar to rely on. And that description fits them like a glove. They are the best defensive team in the league, and they have the best superstar in the league.
And I don't think that's what most people realize is Milwaukee's almost like those Golden State teams. Golden State was obviously incredible offensively, but they were also a very good defensive team. Milwaukee's kind of the same thing. I think there was a stretch where they scored like 70, 80 games in a row of 100 or more points, which is just ridiculous. But they also defend, like you said. They're one of the best defensive teams in the league.
And it's not just Giannis. I mean, you've got also Chris Middleton and Lopez, and the list goes on as far as the talent and depth of that team. So
who do you think they play in the conference final? You like Boston,
I like
Philly,
Toronto.
or Toronto? You like
Toronto. I think the Celtics will struggle. The Sixers, on the other hand, they can definitely make some noise. Again, it comes down to which Embiid we get and what Simmons looks like. The big thing to watch for them is, again, how bad they were on the road. Now, you don't have to deal with that. You're at a neutral site. But also, you can look at that the other way and say, well, they were so good, really good at home, but they're also now not at home. So which way will the neutral site play for them? So I think at the end of the day, the two most talented teams not most talented because the Sixers and Celtics arguably have more talent than the Raptors, but the two best teams are the Bucks and Raptors, the two best defensive teams in the East. I got to give it to those two. Conference final matchup between them. And like we mentioned it with Chris, he thinks the Raptors win again like last year, but I think the Bucks get their revenge.
I like Milwaukee as well. And, man, but who they play in the conference final is going to be tough. I mean, you could really make a case for Toronto, Boston, or Philly. I'm kind of leaning Philly just because
I can see it. It wouldn't shock me at all. It wouldn't shock me at all.
They took Toronto to a Game 7 last year. Obviously, the Raptors don't have Kawhi this year. His shot was the difference, and I think losing him hurts them. And I think Philly could play in Milwaukee.
It's just the way that I'm looking at it as far as it being Bucks, Raptors, Celtics, Sixers. The Bucks would play the Sixers before the conference finals. So
and if that happens, right.
Get there, and it would be so that with my scenario, it would be a Raptors-Celtics matchup before the ECF, in which case I go Raptors. So that's why I didn't mention the Sixers.
Yes.
Now, if somehow the Sixers got into the 3 seed and the Celtics fell to the 4, different story. But I'll go with Bucks and Raptors.
All right. In the West, we know it's LA and everybody else. Okay.
Look,
right.
I mean, for them, for the Western Conference, we can kind of look at the middle between the Nuggets, Jazz, Thunder, and Rockets going 3 through 6. And that could end up falling a million different ways. Out of that,
I would like Utah, but
that group of the middle is what intrigues me most here. Now, there's going to be a good battle for the 8 seed. We know that, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I'm really intrigued by the middle because technically the Clippers still are closer to that than they are the Lakers. So if the Clippers stumble out of the gates, we could be looking at them as a 4 seed or a 3 seed because they're 44-20. Nuggets are 43-22. Jazz 41-23, and then both the Thunder and Rockets at 40-24. So 2 to 6, it's separated by 4 in the win column and 4 in the loss column. The Mavericks are 7 back in the loss column, so upper hill battle for them. But only 4 in the win and loss column between the Clippers at 2 and the Rockets at 6. A lot to be sorted out. I think the Thunder fade. I think they were really kind of riding the wave as the season went on, and you take that momentum away from them. It's going to be tough to get
they don't
back.
have enough firepower.
Not at all. The Rockets, they were, again, on the uptick because of the new system, and like we're talking about with Chris, that could really bode well for them in this restart. The Jazz, I think they're going to fade. I think, like he said, that initial reaction after the whole thing with Gobert, they're a team ready to fracture, and I cannot trust them. The Nuggets are intriguing to me because Jokic, we saw the slimmed down version of him.
Yeah.
So, but is that good or bad? He went the whole season playing at his weight, and now he has 8 games to get used to his new frame. That's not going to be easy. So how do we look at that? So I think the Clippers do keep the 2 seed, but that jumbled mess between 3 and 6, I have no idea how it's going to go. Whoever is in that 3 to 6 range, Nuggets, Jazz, Thunder, Rockets, none of them, in my opinion, can upset the Clippers or the Lakers.
What's interesting is I think the Jazz are the team best equipped to take down the Clippers and the Lakers.
If they're not fractured.
If they're not fractured.
Yeah.
With that being said, though, I think they're a terrible matchup for the Rockets. And I think if that's a 4-5 matchup, they could lose to them in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
Utah is the team to me that is the one who could pose the closest threat to either LA team, just because in the postseason the game slows down. You need
True.
Scorers who can get you buckets in the half court. They're a great defensive team. They're well coached. They have a pretty good bench. They're deep enough. They can make shots. But again, I just worry they're going to get Houston in the first round, and I don't know if they can beat the Rockets.
And then as far as the battle for the 8th seed, the Mavericks are pretty much going to fall into the 7th slot.
Yeah.
And then I don't think there's really much question that the Pelicans are going to find a way into that matchup at this point.
You think so? I'm kind of leaning Portland.
I think, look, we know how this league goes, and everybody kind of always feels like there's some people pulling some strings, and with the schedule the way it looks for the Pelicans and how many times they're on national TV and how attractive it would be to have a Ja Morant, Zion Williamson play-in, and how attractive it would then be to have a Zion Williamson, LeBron James first-round matchup.
They're definitely the matchup I want to see.
Yeah,
I just don't know if they're better than Portland, though. That's the thing.
They're only a game behind Portland as far as getting into the 9th seed. So they're right there to get into that play-in. And then against the Grizzlies, they're more than equipped to beat the Grizzlies in back-to-back games. I really liked the way the Pelicans were playing after they got Zion. I mean, they've got a lot of really sexy pieces.
They do.
Zion, Ingram, Ball, Redick. It kind of just goes all around. Holiday. They have a really good, deep team. It was a team that everybody was excited to see when it was announced that they got the number 1 pick and would get Zion. And then after the trade for AD and they got those young pieces from the Lakers, the whole perception of, wow, if this team is all healthy and ready to go and gets rolling, they could be scary.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we saw before things ended. And I think they'll get right back into it. Look, Zion is so dominant. I mean, anybody who doubted him, they were shut up immediately in his stretch when he came back. They're getting into the play-in. They're going to beat the Grizzlies back-to-back games. I feel really confident in that. And again, like we said, we know this league has been perceived to, whistles will go one way more than the other if it could get the league that much more TV revenue. Look, that's not confirmed by anybody, but it's always largely been kind of believed to be that way. So I feel pretty confident in saying that the Pelicans will get into the play-in matchup and beat the Grizzlies. But all of this doesn't matter because with the Mavericks at 7 and the Pelicans at 8, neither team beats either LA team. So we end up just coming back to it's going to be.
I've said it before. To me, the 8-9 game in the West and really the East is like the 16 seed playing game in March Madness. It's just their little fun. You win a game, you move on, but you know the inevitable. They're not beating the Lakers.
It's going to be fun to see how we get there because there's going to be a good battle in both sides now because the Nets have all the injuries. It's going to be a really good battle, particularly in the more crowded West. But it's all coming down to LA. I don't see either team faltering before the Western Conference Finals. I think the writing's been on the wall since Kawhi picked the Clippers and AD got sent to the Lakers that were on that course. And like Chris, and I don't know your thoughts on this, I go Clippers. I think they're a more well-rounded team. And the numbers, I think, are only lesser for the Clippers than they were for the Lakers because they never really played together all year with the load management for Kawhi and sometimes for Paul George and the injuries to some guys. We never really got to see them all together as much as we'd like to. And I think the 8 games that they have will do a good job of kind of getting that chemistry going. Nobody will touch them in the early rounds of the playoffs. So again, a good chance to get their chemistry going. And now by the time we get to this Western Conference LA matchup in the Western Conference Finals, you're going to have a Clippers team that's been playing together without load management issues as long as everybody's healthy for over a month. So those chemistry issues are out the window. And with Pat Bev, with Montrezl Harrell, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, you're talking about an all NBA defensive team right there. And offensively, again, with Kawhi and Paul George, Lou Will is a walking bucket. So I think they're the team to beat. Avery Bradley's loss hurts the Lakers. I know they still did well without him, and they'll make up for it. But I just think all around, the Clippers are a better team. They're a better coach team. And I think, as we've seen time and time again in their careers, the one player that LeBron has had a really big problem with is Kawhi Leonard.
Yes.
And going up against him, I think Kawhi gets the better of it. And Kawhi's back in the finals.
I'm with you. I like the Clippers.
I hate that we agree so much on this.
I know. But for me, it comes down to Clippers-Lakers. You need a third person. Toronto, all those years that they had DeRozan and Lowry, they were missing that third guy. Finally, last year, they had Kawhi, they had Siakam, and then they got Van Fleet, or they got Lowry, or they got whoever. And the Clippers-Lakers, the Gasol, you got to get that third guy, and you just mentioned him, Lou Williams. To me, I'd take him over Kuzma or Danny Green or whoever. Montrezl Harrell could be that third guy. I think that their number 3 piece is better than the Lakers' number 3 piece.
And again, the depth is there too, because we talk about them adding Markieff Morris before this all shut down. And not that he'll really ever play much, but as far as a good depth, nasty player, they got Joakim Noah sitting on the end of the bench. So they have a lot of good guys, even good, just kind of feisty guys, even towards the end of the bench, that when you get into a series like this where you're going to have some really tough, grind them out, low 100s, if not upper 90s sort of scoring games. And I got to go with the Clippers. And look,
Doc Rivers has been there. I just don't know if I trust Frank Vogel yet over Doc.
And as far as, if we were living in a normal world and they were playing all 7 of the possible 7 of those games at the Staples Center, maybe different, because we all know that LA is a Lakers town, and even the quote-unquote home games for the Clippers would have been road games. So the Clippers would have possibly had 7 road games in that series. So I think being on a neutral site with no crowd benefits the Clippers, because now that you take that out of the equation. So all the extra energy the Lakers would have had to feed off of in, again, essentially possibly 7 home games in that series, that's gone. So all things are equal in a vacuum or a bubble. You're looking at the Clippers roster. You're looking at their depth. You're looking at how they're put together as far as being just a really good, nasty defensive team with that better third option than the Lakers have, like you mentioned. Probably a 6 or 7 game series, but I go the Clippers.
And if you're a person who likes divine intervention and believe in, God working some magic or whatever, you could believe that maybe the Lakers are doing something for Kobe, or you could, so that might play a factor in it. But I think the Clippers are just the better team on paper. Chris Miller said that Kawhi and Paul George are 2 of the 3 best closers in the West.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kawhi personally is the best one. He just, in those moments, I just look at him and he has that it to him.
Exactly.
You can't explain it, but if you want to win a game, that's the guy you want with the ball in your hands. And the Lakers-Clippers games could come down to that, and I'd take Kawhi over LeBron.
So we've both got a Clippers-Bucks final.
We do.
On the count of 3, we say our winner. 1, 2, 3. Bucks.
Clippers.
Ooh. All right, we disagree on something. There we go. I go with the Bucks. I think Giannis has shown his mindset all year. We talk about kind of sort of like the divine intervention with Kobe for the Lakers sort of thing. Giannis and Kobe were really close, and Kobe always challenged and pushed Giannis to win that MVP, and he got that check mark. And then the next thing he challenged Giannis to do was win an NBA title. And he would be there at the precipice of greatness and the chance to grab that title. And again, it's not like the Bucks are only Giannis and nothing else, kind of like those LeBron Cavs teams from his early days in Cleveland. You've got really good shooting around him. You've got another top potential scorer in Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez. They have a lot of talent on that roster more than they're given credit for. It's not just Giannis, and it's going to be another really good defensive matchup. Again, the Bucks are the top-rated defensive team in the league. The Clippers fifth, but would have probably been better if not for all the load management all year. So it's a really tough series. It probably goes 7, but I'm going to give the edge to the Bucks just because I think there's just something about Giannis where this season where I don't want to pick against him in the Eastern Conference playoffs, and I don't want to pick against him in the finals against the Clippers.
You talked about how Kawhi maybe has LeBron's number a little bit. I look back to that Raptors-Bucks series last year, and Giannis definitely struggled in some games against the Raptors. I just think that LA, they're just such a bad matchup for Milwaukee because obviously the Bucks can have the ball in Giannis's hands and he can drive or he can create and kick out to shooters. And you just look at the Clippers and they're just so versatile defensively, and they can put either the smaller Pat Bev on Giannis or Middleton and try and rattle him and get, all up in his psyche and his grill, or they can put Paul George, or they can put Kawhi on him. They can rotate so many bodies. Montrezl Harrell, maybe if they want to go with somebody bigger, that I just don't think the Bucks will get in a good enough offensive rhythm. And not being able to play at home, being at a neutral site, you definitely lean more towards the defensive team. Who you think would have the better defensive game?
But the better
plan.
defensive team is the Bucks.
But not head. I don't think head to head. I don't think head to head the Bucks would be a good match. And then on the opposite end, I mean, maybe Giannis guards Paul George or guards Kawhi. I mean, do you trust Middleton to guard the other guy? Or
well, it's not. I mean, look, you kind of go down the list, and as far as the depth on this team too, like they've got a kind of proven veterans who've been there, done that too, like a Kyle Korver. Dante DiVincenzo kind of showed flashes off the bench, and George Hill had done some really good things off the bench, a good veteran to have. So it's a deeper team than they get credit for. Wesley Matthews off the bench. As far as we talk about having that third score, it's those top two guys of Giannis and Middleton, and then they got Bledsoe, who was averaging 15 a game, and he's had some issues in the past where he's kind of faded in the playoffs. But that three, I think, does not quite as well, but I think it holds up well enough against a Kawhi, Paul George, Lou Will, top 3 scorers sort of thing. So I think for me, the gaps there aren't really that wide. Defensively, I think all year the Bucks proved to be the best defensive team in the league, the best rebounding team in the league. Sure, maybe you kind of give a slight edge here or there to some head-to-head matchups with the Clippers, but they're not kind of massive gaps. And again, I think just Giannis and Kawhi are the 2 best players on the planet right now.
I agree.
LeBron James. I think Giannis is better, not by much. And I just because, again, when it gets down to this, I'm looking at Giannis kind of taking the mantle as the best player in the world, the best player in the NBA without question, and getting the trophy to go with it. It's not like I'm really emphatically on the Bucks here. Like, it's going to be probably a 7-game toss-up, but I give them the slight edge. Oh, it would be a great series. I think it's a series that I wouldn't say it's a series that everybody wants. I think for ratings purposes,
Clippers Bucks wouldn't be as sexy as Lakers Bucks.
It's a LeBron Giannis series.
That's the draw. So from basketball, we go to hockey now. And hockey, we at least have the matchups for the first round.
Yes, but we could only go for the first round picks, though, and can't really talk about much else because in hockey, we've got this whole round robin for the top 4 seeds. So you could have, after we get the kind of play-ins here, and as far as that goes, you could have any array of matchups depending on how the round robin plays out, which I don't think was really fair because, you look at a team like the Bruins in the East, they were going to run away with the President's Trophy.
And they could be a 4 seed.
Exactly. So you could have looked at it with some common sense and said, all right, we still have to have this round robin to sort out 2, 3, and 4, and so that these top 4 teams could get their own reps like the other teams who are going to be in the play-in round. But you could have still said the Bruins, no matter what, end up as the 1 seed. But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And again, the thing that sucks for kind of prognosticating this whole thing is that we don't know how it's going to go as far as the seeding. So all we can really do right now is give our best guess of –
if there's one sport, too, where they could get away with that, with the reseeding, it's hockey, just because of how many upsets there are. But I totally see what you're saying.
All we can do right now
the Bruins could be upset.
Give our best guess for who we think are the contenders, and we could go matchup by matchup in the first round. And don't forget, now they have the added bonus for the losers of the first round that by some odd. I don't know why the NHL did it this way. The losers of the play-in round will all have a 12.5% chance to get the first overall pick.
Most
I have no idea.
bizarre thing ever.
I have no idea why the NHL did it that way. If I was in charge of it, which I'm clearly not, I would have just said it's a lottery of teams 1 through 7, and then you could have just had this same lottery that's going to happen now for the number 1 pick. You could have just said we're doing this for the 8 seed.
Mm-hmm.
And
how awkward was that too for the dude announcing it? He turns over the NHL logo and he reads out like the top pick will go to the seed who finishes.
We don't know yet. Yeah, we don't know yet. So I think what they should have done was kept that placeholder in the 8 seed and the same drawing that they're going to do for the 1 seed, done it for the 8 seed.
Right.
But hey, I don't make those decisions, and it's going to make things interesting because again, you wonder almost in the back of your mind are there some teams in the play-in round who are like, well, we don't really feel like we have a chance to do much, and would we rather be sent through like a pig for slaughter against the Bruins or Lightning in the next round, or would we rather have a 1 in 8 chance of the sweepstakes for the number 1 pick and get Alex Lafreniere, who's one of the best prospects since McDavid, and then I guess if you're going all the way back to Crosby and had to rank those guys, it's probably McDavid, Crosby, Lafreniere. So it's a big talent that you've got a chance to get. So will that play into it? Will we have anybody who says, "Oh, I don't really want to win this round"? But I don't know. That's a topic that we'll have to address after we see teams if they look like they're actively tanking in that first round matchup. But to those first round matchups, and actually we'll start with the one who has been talked about most as a possible tank in this situation. The 5-12 matchup in the East, the Penguins against the Canadiens. Lafreniere is from Montreal, and the Canadiens would love to have that. The NHL would love to have that. We know that there's obviously always all those rumors about the NBA rigging things. Well, you have the perfect opportunity here for the NHL to kind of rig the draw and have the top overall prospect who's from Montreal go to one of your original 6 franchises in Montreal. So that's something to watch for. But in this series, the Penguins are the much better team. I don't want to count the Canadiens out entirely because what they do possess is the best goaltender in the NHL in Carey Price.
When he's on.
When he's on.
Yep.
And you're talking about stealing 3 out of 5, not impossible, but the Penguins are loaded. They have a goalie issue to sort out. And again, you don't want that in the postseason. But they just have too much firepower offensively. They'll get the better of the Canadiens, in my opinion.
I agree. And I think, too, the layoff helps them, but also getting swept last year by the Islanders. They, didn't have to go through one of those long postseason runs that they went back-to-back for 3-4 years ago. I think they're plenty well-rested, the more talented team. I think they beat
the Canadiens. Look, let's not forget, they were the team that benefited most from this expanded postseason. They were a 500 team. By far the lowest point total of those who got in. They had 71. So
in hockey terms, you're basically saying they're going to win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, true.
It's
true.
What that is. No, that'll be a fun matchup.
There. A better matchup, the 8-9 matchup of Toronto and Columbus. That's one that I could see going either way because the Columbus franchise has a knack for just being such a pesky team in the postseason. You look at the last couple of years, back when the Caps ended up winning the Stanley Cup, they were down in a 2-0 hole against Columbus. They hit the post Columbus did in overtime where they could have got up 3-0. So they did that. Last year against the Lightning, in one of the most lopsided matchups in NHL history as far as the point totals from the regular season go, they ended up sweeping the Lightning. So
God, I love hockey.
I never want to. It's always you never know what you're going to get with the Blue Jackets. As far as, excuse me, let me correct myself. You know what you're going to get, and it's a team that's going to be pesky. You never know what you're going to get beyond the first round, but in the first round they're going to give teams a fit. And I mean, the Maple Leafs really all year struggled to reach their potential with all the talent they have in Austin Matthews, John Tavares. They never really reached their potential. Nylander, another top talent out there. They've got a lot of guys. So you look at Mitch Marner, who you say, well, this team could be one of the best in the NHL, but they never really kind of showcase that. And that's why they're an 8 seed who has to deal with a 5-game play-in against one of the toughest outs in the NHL. I'm going to lean the Blue Jackets just because I don't like picking against John Tortorella in first rounds. And I
Took
think
the words right out of my mouth.
Exactly. And they're just a tough team. They're getting Seth Jones back as well. In terms of the goaltending, they have one of the best goaltending situations in the NHL. The Leafs, on the other hand, were a team that was in the market for a goaltender at the trade deadline. So I go with the Blue Jackets. Could be a good, fun series. You've got a team that underachieved significantly in the Maple Leafs against a team that always overachieves in the Blue Jackets. So I go Columbus.
When we had Joe Bettinati on, he said the two teams that he loved going into the playoffs, had it been a normal season, he loved how Columbus was playing and he loved how Philly was playing. And I couldn't agree more with what you were saying about Tortorella. He's just one of those coaches who always gets the best out of his teams in the playoffs. They're never an easy out. And I just feel like a lot of people will look at this matchup. They'll see Maple Leafs versus the Blue Jackets. They'll know that Matthews and Tavares are on Toronto. But like you said, they haven't been playing well really for most of this year. The Blue Jackets just – this is one of those playoff series where they're just the more grittier, grindier team. And I think they'll find a way to beat Toronto. I'm with you.
Yeah, and now we go to another series that's kind of interesting. It's two teams, again, that really didn't play up to what their potential was this year, but could be pesky playoff teams, and they're very well coached. You've got the now Joe Quenneville coached Florida Panthers, and you've got the Barry Trotz coached New York Islanders.
Yeah,
two coaches with tremendous Stanley Cup pedigrees, who, again, underachieved this year. Of all the first round matchups in both conferences, this one to me is the biggest coin flip, just because of the way the teams are constructed and the guys who are leading the charge. I really don't know which way to go. You look at Florida, Sergei Bobrovsky was their big acquisition in the offseason, then didn't regain his passive as in a form. Does the long layoff help him? And maybe he can regain that. And this is a team that can get hot. As far as the offense goes, with Huberdeau leading the way, 78 points this year, 23 goals, 55 assists. You look at that as kind of your playmaker offensively. They have some talent. They did make a trade in which they got rid of one of their top offensive players in Trocheck to Carolina. So they kind of were in sell mode. We're going to punt on this season, but then this all happens and they get in as the 10th seed. So I look then at the other side of the Islanders. They are the better team. They're the better defensive team with Barry Trotz. Like what we said about Tortorella, you don't really want to kind of pick against them. I don't like picking against Barry Trotz after all the runs he went on with the Capitals, the run he went on last year with the Islanders.
Yeah.
As far as their talent goes, Matty Barzal, Brock Nelson, two really good offensive pieces for them. I'm going to go with the Islanders, and it pains me to say that as a Rangers fan, but again, I don't see either team here making a deeper run into the postseason, and it's a real coin flip just based on the way they're constructed and the guys who are coaching them.
I like Florida in this matchup. Trotz, the past 2 years, he's definitely won a Stanley Cup, got to the Eastern Conference Final. He's kind of changed the narrative on him as a coach, as kind of the guy who could do really great in the regular season, couldn't perform in the postseason. With that being said, though, the guy on the other side, Joe Quenneville's won 3 cups. They have Bobrovsky, like you said. And I just worry about teams like the Islanders, who rely so much on their defense and goaltending after this restart in shortened series. If you start to press, panic a little bit because the series are so short, you maybe know you have to score a little bit more. You don't want to get into those one-goal overtime type games that they're so good at winning. And Florida with their offense, I think, could provide some problems. I like the Panthers.
Right. Yeah, again, the fact that we're split on this one.
Yeah, it's a coin flip.
It's a real coin flip. One that's not a coin flip. It's going to be a 3-game sweep. New York Rangers against the Carolina Hurricanes. No analysis necessary.
Oh, I'm dropping a bomb on the window at the Hurricanes, let me tell you. I'm going to Charlestown, betting this thing hard. Carolina, absolutely. It's a good series. When we talked about this a couple weeks ago, I told you how much I see in the Rangers' DNA of what the Hurricanes were maybe last year, this team that kind of overachieved this season. They get this opportunity to be in the postseason, and they go up against the team that was in the conference final last year. Carolina's got so much team speed. We talked about Tortorella, Trotz. Rod Brind'Amour is another guy, man. The way he coaches is how he played, and he gets that out of his players. They got a lot of guys that you probably haven't heard of, but man, can they play? They got a lot of team speed. And the Rangers, they got a lot of young talent too. This series, I cannot see how it doesn't go 5 games. With that being said, though, I'm sorry, Joe, but I think I'm going to have to lean Carolina.
All right, so in all honesty, I'm not as pumped as I was about it. I'm not going 3-game sweep for the Rangers. I am saying the Rangers win the series, though. You look at the regular season, the Rangers own Carolina. As far as a matchup goes, they match up really well with the Hurricanes. They swept them in the regular season 4-0. The Rangers were one of the hottest teams in the NHL before everything shut down. And before Igor Shesterkin got into a car accident and missed a couple of weeks, he was the best goaltender in the NHL for a 2-week period. He's back. Now, whether it's him or Lundqvist for the most part got the starts against the Hurricanes this year and historically is tremendous against the Hurricanes. So either way, you've got one of the hottest, best young goaltenders in the league, or you've got a top 5 goaltender in NHL history who is still – he hasn't been what he was, but he has been what he was against the Hurricanes. So they've got the goaltending advantage for sure, unless the Hurricanes pull back that Zamboni driver and let him go for the 5. All kidding aside, those two, they have the goaltender advantage. Defensively, the Rangers struggle, but they get a lot of good offense from the defensive side, led by Tony DeAngelo. And then just going forward, I mean, there's a lot of pieces on this Rangers offense that gets overlooked because they're rebuilding and weren't quite there yet, but we're getting there. So you'll hear more about them in the years to come, the next 2 years. But Artemi Panarin deserves the Hart Trophy, in my opinion, over the guys who are getting tossed around for it, and Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid. He deserves it if we're talking about most valuable player rather than, again, the age-old debate of most valuable or best. He probably satisfies both of those, but he's not going to get the Hart Trophy, unfortunately. The talent, Chris Kreider broke his foot, was going to miss the remainder of the season. He's healthy now. Mika Zibanejad, one of the most underrated players in the league. The Rangers get this. I don't know that they go too much further, but they get this. And for the Rangers, one of the unique things is that they could still win that number 1 pick because they have Carolina's pick from a trade earlier this season. So there's a couple of things that have to happen, but the possibility is there that the Rangers could win this series but still be in the lottery for the number 1 pick. So I'm pumped about that.
You think about that at least once a day, don't you?
Just once, a little bit more, but it's going to be a fun series. Look, the East is chock full of those under the radar teams that could make a run. Yes. But again, it all kind of dies down when you look at what's on the other side of this playing round as far as the Bruins, Lightning, Capitals, and Flyers go. From that group, the Lightning, we talked about it when Joe Beninati was on. They're my pick. They're the best team in the league by far.
Yep. They're due. It's their time. There's just, in sports, there's a certain time where teams go through losing. They learn how to lose. You wonder if they're ever going to get over that hump. And Tampa last year, they hit their low point, a record season. You get swept by Columbus, and I think this is their year.
No question. So I go the Lightning. Again, we don't know how it's going to shake out in terms of the matchups after the play-in round because of the round robin. But any way you slice it, I'm going with the Lightning. And when we get past the play-in round and the round robin, we'll again do our picks then for the actual bracket when it's set.
Yeah.
But no matter what, and hold me to this when the time comes, as long as nobody got injured or came down with COVID, as long as they're full go, do not let me change my mind on this at all. I'm picking the Lightning.
I won't. Unless they play the Caps, then I'll maybe convince you to change your mind.
There you go.
So that was the East. What about the West? Who are you liking over there? Got some good matchups as well.
Yeah, the West this year was so weak. I mean, before this shutdown, again, as the bitter Rangers fan that I am and have come to be since I'm 22 and a half, and none of my teams have won a championship yet, they were in a position to be in the playoffs with comfort if they were in the West, yet they're the 11th seed in the East. So it's a much weaker conference. And as far as going to the playoff matchups, you don't know really which way to lean. We can start with the Canucks matchup against the Wild if you'd like, just because the Canucks are my kind of under-the-radar team that, again, Joe Beninati mentioned a couple weeks ago. So I like them to get past the Wild in that first round. It's tougher for the West just because it's so weak and you don't really know. Whereas in the East, there are teams from the play-in round who you could see making a run, still losing to the Lightning or the Bruins, but you could see making a run because the Capitals and Flyers I could see faltering.
Mm-hmm.
In the West, I think, and I'll go on record saying this now, we're recording this Sunday, July 5th. The 4 winners of the play-in round in the West all lose to the top 4 seeds in the West. I don't think we see a single play-in team make it outside of the round of 16.
Oof. In hockey, I don't know.
It's tough.
Playoff hockey is one of those things. The easier it looks, the more chaos ensues. On paper, I agree with you. It looks like, how could Vegas and St. Louis and Colorado and those teams lose? But it never is that easy. I know we both like Vegas a lot. We think St. Louis is a great story. They're obviously the defending Cup champions. But I don't know. I think one of those teams might squeak in there.
I'll take it back. I'll say there's only one outcome that I could see happening in that case, and that's if the 5th-seeded Oilers match up with if the Stars are the 4th-seeded team after the play-in. That's actually the one where I could see it going differently because of the firepower for the Oilers. And actually, spoiler alert, I have them getting past the Blackhawks. That's the one I could see. But other than that, the top 4 in the West, with the exception of the Stars playing the Oilers possibly, I don't really have any issues seeing them beating whoever comes out of the Flames Jets, whoever comes out of the Canucks Wild, and whoever comes out of the Predators Coyotes.
I got Oilers over the Blackhawks too. The Blackhawks are not the Kane, Taves, Crawford teams that you think of. They're lucky to be in the playoffs.
Exactly.
The Oilers are the much better team. If you have not seen Connor McDavid play hockey, then you are truly missing out. He's pretty good. Dreisaitl's pretty good. And the Oilers are one of those teams you want to do well, so
of course
the NHL can spotlight McDavid.
Plenty of issues on the back end, the back end and in goal. So after the matchup with the Blackhawks and after a possible matchup with the Stars, they're going to have a lot of trouble with those top 3 teams. But again, they should not have any issues with the Blackhawks.
Agreed.
If they play the Stars, they'll get through. The Predators, Coyotes, again, the Coyotes, another team lucky to be there.
And they got off to a hot start.
Yeah. Unlike the East, where you look at some of the lower-seeded teams, with the exception of the Canadiens at 12, you look at the 9, 10, 11 seeds, and you could say for all of them, they could make a little run. The Coyotes don't have it in them. Give me the Predators in an easy series here against the Coyotes. And then just to finish it out for me, again, you could see my lack of enthusiasm about the play-in round in the West. Just because the West was so weak this year.
Well, I mean, their teams.
I go with the Jets over the Flames. So for me, it's Jets, Oilers, Canucks, and Predators, and there's really not much I want to say about it.
Well, the California teams in the West, the Ducks, Kings, and Sharks are normally really, really good, and this year they just are not. The top 4 in the West kind of separate themselves, although I think one of them trip up and maybe somebody
again, with the exception of the Stars, Oilers, that's it. The Oilers in 5 in the 5th seed and the Stars in the 4th. The Blues, Avalanche, and Golden Knights are far and away stronger than the pack. So again, just because we're picking things here, I'm going officially I'm going Jets, Oilers, Canucks, and Predators, but with the exception of the Oilers, the other teams have no shot going up against the Blues, Avalanche, and Golden Knights.
And I am with you on all 4 of those picks, which means that you should probably take the other side if you're listening to this and want to bet, because that's how that works. But I just, I wouldn't overthink this one. It's the better teams.
Once the brackets end up being set, we'll have another sort of pick episode for the NHL. But as far as those top 3 teams go, the Blues, Avalanche, and Golden Knights, my pick to come out of that crop this year is the Golden Knights. We mentioned it in the Joe Beninati episode. We'll mention it more going forward. But for me, the most complete team in the West, and I think we get the Tampa Bay Golden Knights Stanley Cup final that we almost saw in 2018.
Luckily we didn't.
Luckily we didn't for your Capitals.
We didn't.
So we'll get the matchup we almost saw back then.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to keep agreeing with you, but I really like Vegas too. I mean, we're both – no, you're not going to change my mind about the Lightning. I think they're going to come out of the East.
Look, at least out of all this, we disagreed on the Clippers against the Bucks.
Right.
Because we agree on the finals matchup and the winner for the NHL. At least we disagreed on the
West. Probably after seeing these teams play a couple series, I might change my mind. But as of today, July 5th, I also probably am leaning Vegas as well to come out. So, Joe, since we are having a longer episode because of the NBA NHL preview, where would you go, Joe, this week, especially because it's early July?
Yeah, I was going to say that's for the better because there wasn't really much to choose from. And you know what? It's all right.
And you know what? We need a win in trivia. All right. We talked about how this is the second half of 2020. We're coming out of the locker room firing on all cylinders. All right. So I assume you have an NBA question as well.
I do. I have an NBA question for you. I asked you the question first last time, so you ask it to me first this time.
You got it. All right. Joe Malfa, as always, 90 seconds and 3 strikes after I read you the question.
All right.
Who are the 3 franchises in the NBA with the longest title drought?
Oh, PJ, hold on.
Is that your question?
That was my question, too.
So out of the timeout, we gave ourselves a little 30-minute break. That was eventually going to happen.
We knew that was going to happen at some point. Exact same question for each other. And I cut you off before you even read the question, but go ahead and read what the full question was.
So it was going to be the 3 NBA franchises that have won at least one title that have the longest drought
in the
NBA.
And the same one.
So we can't use that one.
All right,
so
what's your new question then?
We've found each other 2 questions, Joe. All right, this is NBA still.
I switched to NHL now because that was, that's the other theme of the episode. I switched to NHL.
There you go. Yeah, I like it. So your question is, who is the only player in NBA history to record more than 200 blocks and 200 steals in the same season? Now, there are a lot of players in the NBA, so I'll tell you that this is a Hall of Famer who is a perennial all-star. You know his name. And go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right, I'm ready. 200 blocks, 200 steals, single season.
Correct.
Dennis Rodman.
No.
All right. I thought that
was a good guess. No, that was.
All right. Let's see. Dennis Rodman was my definite guess for that one. So we're talking Hall of Famer, 200 blocks, 200 steals in a season. The big block guys that come to mind. Dikembe Mutombo comes to mind. I don't know if he was a big steals guy, though. He was definitely a big blocks guy. I don't know if he was a big steals guy.
Remaining.
LeBron definitely doesn't have that many blocks, but he's a big guy in terms of steals. 200 blocks in a season, 200 steals in a season. Let's see. How much time do I still have?
You're at the 50-second mark, so 40 left.
All right, 40 seconds left. I'm trying to think. Other big blocks guys who are big-time Hall of Famers. Hakeem and Kareem. But the steals
30 seconds.
Is tough. All right. I didn't get Rodman. I was sold on Rodman. The more I talk myself in circles around this, it's going to be tough because steals are tough. So I'm going to say Hakeem or Kareem as my other 2 guesses. Is one of them right?
Hakeem Olajuwon is correct.
It's all right. Finally, we're off the schneid here.
That was almost Lundqvist territory when I was saying it and then almost didn't say it. I'm glad you said it, though. Well done with Hakeem. You are correct. He had the blocks.
After watching The Last Dance, my mind immediately went to Rodman because that's all the dude did. Maybe he didn't have the blocks, I guess, but more of a rebound steals guy. But, like I said, steals are tough because you think of the guys who get steals historically, and it's a lot of the times you go to guys who are traditional.
Pauls, point guards. Yeah.
Point guards, really good on-ball defenders. But steals and blocks is tough because you think of the guys who get the blocks, you got some big lumbering 7-foot guys, heavier guys like a Shaq who might not be steals guys. So I was like, you know what? I know Kareem and Hakeem are Hall of Famers, like you said, who got the blocks. So hopefully one of them had the steals, and there we go. We're 2 for 7 now. So we have the percentage.
So you got 2. All right. So what's the new?
I got lazy. I didn't really get too creative with my new question for you. Almost the same question that we were going to both ask each other, but for the NHL. I took away the qualifier, though, like you had, as far as had to have previously won one. So of the 24 teams remaining who are in the play-in round, at least.
Yep.
If you could give me 3 of the top 5 longest current title droughts, I'll give it to you. And your time begins, if you understand the question.
I do.
Your time begins now.
All right, so right off the bat, I know it's not Vegas because they've been around for 3 years.
Exactly.
I know Arizona hasn't won one, but they're a newer team. Florida hasn't won one, but they're a newer team. I'll go Minnesota Wild.
The Minnesota Wild are not on this list.
All right.
Their drought is 18 seasons, and it puts them somewhere along 12th on the list. 30 seconds gone.
All right, let's see here.
3 of the top 5. You got a good % chance here because you talked through
Flyers.
some of them.
Flyers.
The Flyers are one of them, correct. They have the 3rd longest drought of 43 seasons of the team staying in it. That's one. 2 more.
Tampa?
Tampa is not on that list, no.
Ooh. I thought they were
Tampa won in the 2000s.
Oh, that's right. They did.
04.
Pavier. Yeah.
2 strikes.
Right,
2 strikes, 30 seconds, and you need to give me 2 more.
Well, I don't know if they're around long enough. I don't know if I want to guess that.
15 seconds.
Okay. Winnipeg? Is it Winnipeg, Atlanta? Do they count?
No, they are not on the list.
No. Okay. Gosh, got it wrong. So who are the
You got 5 seconds if you want to throw. Oh, wait, that was 3 strikes. What am I saying? I'm an idiot.
Yeah,
Forget the rules of our own game. So the one that I thought for sure you were going to get, because like I remember we've audibly made fun of them in the office at NBC Sports Washington, was the Toronto Maple Leafs. And they're like a big time meme on Twitter. There's a days since the Toronto Maple Leafs won the Stanley Cup Twitter account. They're at 51 seasons.
Yeah.
The Vancouver Canucks are at 48 seasons. They've never won it. They've come close, 94, 11. They're at 48. The Flyers, who you got at 43. You talk, like we said about the Hakeem thing and previously the Lundqvist thing, where you mentioned one and you kick yourself for not getting it. You mentioned the Coyotes. They have been around long enough. 39 seasons.
That
the 4th team on the list. Yes.
Man.
And the 5th team, the New York Islanders. Ever since their 4-peat in the 80s, they have not won. So
okay,
those are
interesting.
Those are the top 5.
Well done, Joe. You retook the lead at 2-1. I'm not happy. Yeah. Well, good luck with your move to Florida this week.
I appreciate that. By the
Next time we do the pod,
by the time we release this episode, I should be somewhere down I-95 in the deep south, getting down back towards my new adoptive home for work in the Fort Lauderdale area. So
perfect.
By the
Good luck.
By the time people listen to this, that's where I should be, and then we get back to our normal schedule and format when we come back on the other side of this.
Beautiful. Thanks again to Chris Miller for joining us, spending some time out of his busy schedule to talk some hoops, a little NHL talk as well. And, like you said, we'll be back next week with the normal format, guest segment. Where would you go, Joe? Trivia. Till then, we'll see you next time.
Sounds good.